We're back. This is Renovate and Build with Jim and Sandra, powered by Fair Trade Works.
I'm a hard working man. I got it all on the line for a piece of the promised land. And I'm burning my candle at both ends.
Good morning. Thanks for having us on this morning. I've got two hardworking men joining me right now in the studios for Renovate and Build. The first is my co-host of the show, founder and president of Fair Trade Works, Jim Perkins. And the second is one of our professional partners, a lifelong resident of Vancouver and architectural principal, Tim Ankerman. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, and Tim, it's thanks so much for coming in. It's nice to see you outside of our normal setting, I guess, of having meetings and poring over drawings and projects and pre-planning. So,
well, and you normally don't have a whole bunch of people listening on a Saturday morning during the discussions.
We better remember people are listening, otherwise you might say a couple of things out of hand here. So
it's a pleasure being here, and I'll be very sensitive.
Fantastic. And Tim, what do you got planned for the weekend?
Well, we've done a lot of traveling this last month, so unfortunately I'm going to have to start to pay for that, and it looks like I'm going to be at the boards this weekend.
Yeah, back in the boards.
Back on the boards.
And Italy, I mean, you must be having to work out after all the great food in Italy.
Actually, I was doing a lot of working out in Italy, and it was awfully hot, so it was actually kind of nice to come back to a cooler climate to go running in.
Good for you. Well, Tim, from working with you on so many large and small development projects, including our 72-acre resort in Ontario, we wanted to have you come in today to share your insight, especially being a local boy, with what you see as being the main issues with Vancouver's big plan for the future. I mean, currently the statistics show that half of our population are renters, but this is a big but. The median income for these renters is $34,000. That's not a lot of money to live in, or live on, rather, in Vancouver, especially when they're paying average rents of $1,050 up to $1,250 in rent. What do you see as a solution to rectify this dilemma?
Well, there will be a number of solutions, and you know, you've got to see, you've got to look at the city as being an evolving being, and as cities grow, and especially when they grow fast, city of Vancouver, of course, everyone loves to live here. You can't forecast the problems such as lack of rental. Whistler went through that in the 80s, a huge boom, and it was actually employee housing that was the concern up there. With the 2008 recession and with a surplus, or with a lot of employee housing units being built, they now have a surplus. And so I'm very, very confident with all the plans that have been put into place in the city of Vancouver that we are going to play catch up, and we're going to get there.
Yeah, it's a bright forecast. I know we've got a lot of big minds here, so I'm sure we can find a solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tim, where is this land, for constant development, where is this land going to come from? I know I've been looking for land for quite some time, commercial and residential, and the inventory is extremely limited here.
Yes, and they're not making land anymore.
No.
And in the Lower Mainland especially, we have physical geographic constraints. We have the mountains to the north, we have the ocean to the west, we have the border to the south, and miles and miles of agricultural land reserve to the east. And so, in my mind, it's not about finding new land to build. It's about using the land that we have much more sensitively, and that means densification, and it's by far the most sustainable thing that we can do. And so what the city of Vancouver is doing right now is they're going through various programs that started with something called the STIR program, which was a short-term incentive for rental, and that happened in 2009. And a number of projects were built and a number of units were created. They've refined that now into something called the Rental 100 program, and they hope to achieve about 5,000 units over the lifespan of that program. There is a huge need. They forecast about 16,000 rental units being necessary between now and 2021. But between the build out of the STIR program, the 5,000 units that they hope to achieve through the Rental 100 program, as well as our condominiums. Our condominiums represent about 2/3 of the new construction in our city, and most of those, or a lot of those, get rented. And so, in terms of affordability, you know, CMHC tends to look at these things, and they advise, and financial advisors advise not to spend any more than sort of 30% of your income. So when we talk about households that that are $34,000, more and more often two people are living in a house, so that
Right.
becomes $68,000. 30% of $34,000 is actually $850 a month, and so if you double that, you're up to $1,700 a month. So we're not that far off where we should be in terms of affordability, especially in such an expensive city.
It's interesting how you break it down because it does make more sense that way. Right now, they're saying the current vacancy rate is 1.9. It's supposed to tighten up to 1.8 next year. And as you pointed out, the Vancouver Affordable Housing Agency is saying we need 16,000 houses, or rental units, I should say, by 2021. Do you think there's any extra incentives that the city could provide to meet some of those demands?
No, I think the city is really doing what they can. If you look at the major arteries in the city of Vancouver, and that means Knight Street, Oak Street, Broadway, 12th Avenue, all these arteries are already Zone C2, which allows 4 stories of condominiums. What the city is now under the Rental 100 program allowing is up to 6 stories and about 30% more density. Other incentives that they're proposing are things like what are called development cost levies being waived, and that comes out to tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, Jim, as you well know.
Yeah.
And most importantly, a fast track process. It's reduced building costs because you're not paying for a new home warranty. You don't have to put in as much parking. So the city is really, I think, trying very, very aggressively to tackle the problem. I think it's now up to developers to educate themselves on the return on these buildings, which can be just as great, if not greater, than condominiums, with far less risk, really, because there is a deep market for
Right.
renters, and we're not caught by the ebbs and flows of our economy. And most importantly, it's cheaper to build. Far, far cheaper to build and faster to build. So, once these things get rented out, they can either just, depending on the investor or the developer, they can either be passive income and just live off the income produced by that building, or they can set a certain cap rate and sell it at a profit. So, I just think it's really time for builders and developers to step up to the plate to understand that, change their mindset. It's always been historically condos, and I think the city has done what they can. Now it's just up to the building industry to educate themselves and to carry on with what the city has provided.
Just a shift in responsibility.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we've got a few of them on our plate right now, and they're very successful projects, and it's really the creative developers who are seeing it, who are seeing the market for that, and I'm hoping they're going to be successful.
Yeah, makes sense. Tim, rental units are as tiny as 320 square feet, so we can't really go smaller.
No, we cannot go smaller. You're quite right.
Or they'll be called closets.
And that takes me back to obviously, are we talking about one person living in that dwelling unit or two? And I can't imagine two people wanting to live in 320 square feet. But lifestyles change as well, and we're doing a number of 320 square foot units, for example, in the West End. And the lifestyle in the West End is such that people they don't have large dinner parties anymore.
Yeah.
They don't eat at home. They've got sort of a kitchenette versus a full U-shaped kitchen, which is historically what we've done in condos. And why? It's because there's restaurants just down at the end of the street that they use, and they're not expensive restaurants, and they don't have parking. Well, they don't have parking because the West End, you can walk everywhere and you're close to public transit. So this whole shift about getting cars off the street and accommodating more people in smaller spaces, again, is probably the most sustainable way we can start looking at our cities and how they should be evolving.
Yeah, and it's using my experience of being living in London, for example. I'm a British chap, like you said. Like in Vancouver, people come home, they get changed, and they're out their door again. They go out and enjoy that Vancouver lifestyle, and that's why people live here. You go to London, everybody goes home and locks the door and doesn't leave again till work in the morning. So
right, they become what Le Corbusier said in the 1940s. They're machines for living.
Right.
And you sleep there, and you get changed there, and often that's all people are doing with their condominiums now.
But I'm going to be talking about some of the people too that are listening, that they aspire to own larger properties, right? When they get to that point in their life, they're
Right.
starting out small. Do you think that there will be room for that, or do you think that Vancouver's just going to continue to have to densify?
Well, I believe that that if they can stick to that 30% and only pay rent at 30%, that leaves a lot of room to save. And with that savings, depending on what their income is and their lifestyle, they can, I certainly think, can afford to sort of step into the condo market. I think the single-family market is becoming more and more distant with our next generation. I think it's going to be very, very difficult with the amount of immigration and the money that's pouring into our city in both the west side and the east side for our kids to be able to afford a home. So I think, unfortunately, there is going to be a shift in the way that we historically think about raising a family. And you see it all over Yaletown. You see lots of young couples with their families, and as long as there's public parks and amenity space and housing and schooling and all the other things that go along with raising a family, it's a shift in attitude, but I think it is the sustainable thing to do, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Very interesting.
Very interesting indeed. So thanks so much, Tim. We really do appreciate your official opinion on all these matters. And I know you are a wealth of knowledge. I've spent many hours with you talking about all sorts of different things, and it's I always learn lots of different things. There's obviously lots of dialogue that we can take place here around all these very relevant topics.
Yes. We've been speaking with Tim Ankman, the founder and principal of Ankman Marchand Architects. You can reach him, if you'd like, at 604-872-2595 for all of his solutions, especially green solutions and sustainability. And as well, if you'd like to comment more on our low vacancy rate discussions, you can email us at radio@fairtradeworks.biz. We love to hear from you.
And that's all we have time for today on Renovate and Build. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we'll be speaking with our neighbourhood news reporter in Nanaimo, Mike Cavell, about what's happening on the island in construction and development.
And if you're looking for new appliances, be sure to be here next week as we invite Coast Wholesale's Steve Edgar in for a long discussion on choosing the latest appliances.
Sandra, we've discussed a lot of stats here on Renovate and Build, but we are going to be discussing next week some incredible statistics with Peter Norman, a chief economist of Altus Group. Did you know that the residential renovation and repairs market in Canada has doubled since the 1990s to a record $64 billion last year? That's $64 billion. Peter Norman will be sharing how big the construction industry is in Canada right now.
And if you're thinking of doing something with that ugly garage floor, Megan Gary will be featuring garage flooring on Product Face Off next week. Hope you'll join us then.
Great information continues with Tom Lucas and Sherry Brown on Radio Real Estate right here on AM 650. We'll see you guys next Saturday.
Have a good weekend.
There's still lots more ahead. This is Renovate and Build, powered by Fair Trade Works with Jim and Sandra.